Yo, what is up everybody? It's Jay the Great and welcome back to another Naruto reaction video here today. And today I got another requested video by y'all, because when y'all ask, y'all shall receive, because I love y'all and I rock with all y'all. As you can tell by the title, we got Kakashi Hatake versus Jiraiya. So on one side, we got one of the most badass characters in my opinion in the whole Naruto verse. We got Kakashi Hatake. The show just has a way of bringing him into every battle in such a cool way. And he's just a cool ass dude. He's chill. He has a Sharingan. He has a bunch of jutsus that he's mastered through the use of the Sharingan. You know, they call him the copy ninja for a reason. And on the other side, we got Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin, one of the coolest characters in my opinion as well. So these are some of my most favorite characters. I know this fight in general, this what if battle is debated highly in the Naruto universe. And I am very curious to see what Swagkage, the great expert of Naruto on YouTube, has to say about this one. But before we begin, if you enjoy any loves, greatly appreciate, hit that like button, turn on bell notifications to stay up to date with yours truly. And if you're new and you enjoy, you know, maybe this is your first time on one of these, or you just been, on and off, and you messed with me, hit that sub button, man, because once you do, you're part of the family forever. Let's not waste any more time though. Screen. Let's see what Swag has to say about this one.
How's it going, everybody? Swagkage here, and welcome to today's video. It's a versus battle video. It's obviously about Kakashi versus Jiraiya, and off the top of my head, I don't think people have been asking for this excessively. I mean, I could be wrong, but I haven't seen a lot of demand for it. Still, I wanted to do the battle anyway because I thought it sounded really cool. I mean, these are both wise, experienced shinobi. They both acted as mentors to Naruto. They both know a whole bunch of jutsu. I'm pretty sure everybody already knows all the parallels between these two. Now, on the subject of the actual fight, the best way to compare Kakashi to Jiraiya might seem to be, at first glance, taking a look at their respective fights with Pain. While Jiraiya doesn't take part in a whole lot of battles throughout the series, Pain is luckily an opponent that he and Kakashi both share. This has led many people to base their conclusions on how each one fared in their respective fights. And while doing this isn't necessarily a bad thing, many aspects of these two fights are often taken out of context to make Jiraiya look good and Kakashi look bad. I've come across a handful of people who say something along the lines of, well, Jiraiya fought all 6 paths of pain at once, and Kakashi was killed by 1. Some people even take it a step further by bringing up this panel where Kakashi says, I can't believe Lord Jiraiya fought 6 at once. That's crazy, as if to imply that Kakashi wouldn't have been able to do the same thing, ergo Kakashi is weaker than Jiraiya. And there are a lot of problems with thinking this way. The first being that Jiraiya didn't actually fight all 6 paths of pain.
Yeah, he fought 3, I believe.
He fought 3, and then as soon as the rest showed up, he was killed immediately. And before anybody tries to say, well, they just caught him off guard, he was attacked from behind, or whatever, no, that's not true either. He explicitly states, to face all 3 at once is a bit much. Even in Sage mode, I'll be killed. The paths of pain that he did fight weren't even that strong either. I mean, like, the animal path was pretty tough with its insane, endless summon spam, but the human path and Preta path are both support fighters, not these frontline combat-centric units like the Diva, Asura, and Animal Path are. Meanwhile, Kakashi fought the 2 strongest paths of pain by himself and nearly managed to take both of them out. He also went into the fight with practically no intel aside from the knowledge that the paths of pain share a field of vision, so it's not like he had that much of an advantage over Jiraiya in his situation anyway. In his fight, he damaged the Asura path to such an extent that the Naraka path had to feed it to the King of Hell to restore it to a combat-ready state. And he also nearly wiped out the Diva path with a Raikiri, albeit with the assistance of Choji and Choza. Now, the Asura path did intercept this Raikiri at the last second, stopping Kakashi from getting the kill. But still, what he managed to do in his fight against Pain is very impressive. I agree. I think a lot of people give him way less credit than he deserves. So now that we've covered that, let's move on to everything else. In terms of overall physical prowess, Jiraiya edges Kakashi out in a couple of areas. This isn't super surprising because he's capable of entering Sage mode, and speaking of, most of his feats do come from Sage mode. I mean, to be honest, I've struggled to find a lot of base Jiraiya feats, but that's not a huge issue. Yeah, there aren't many. It doesn't take him very long to enter Sage mode in the manga. He spends the length of about a chapter on the defensive against Pain summons while he gathers the natural energy he needs, and over the course of this chapter, he takes part in maybe maybe 2, 3, or 4 skirmishes. I mean, it really isn't that much time, and considering he's able to gather the nature energy while he's on top of one of his summons, I think he'd be able to enter Sage Mode in a fight against Kakashi without problems. Anyway, once he's entered Sage Mode, his strength is pretty ridiculous. He's obviously much stronger than Kakashi is. He spends his fight with Pain just knocking people around with no trouble, including the Human Path and a gigantic boar summon comparable in size to Gamabunta. I mean, as far as strength goes, these are things that Kakashi just can't compete with, plain and simple, and I don't think I need to elaborate much further. His chakra pool is also, without a doubt, much larger than Kakashi's is, though this discrepancy becomes a bit less noteworthy once we get to the war arc. Throughout the fight with Pain, Jiraiya uses a plethora of ninjutsu, including a massive Rasengan, a bunch of elemental jutsu, summons, his weird hair manipulation jutsu, not to mention a really powerful genjutsu, among other things. And at no point in the fight does he say anything about being low on chakra or whatever, so it's safe to assume that even when he's not in Sage Mode, he boasts a pretty large supply of it. There's a bit of other evidence to support this as well, such as his ability to summon Gamabunta on its own, and the massive scale of a lot of his ninjutsu, such as Dark Swamp, massive Rasengan, so on and so forth. Now, speed is where this gets a little bit tricky. I'll wait until I start breaking down Kakashi's speed to compare it to Jiraiya's, but first I'll list off the many feats that he displays during his fight against Pain. He jumps while standing very high up on one of the Rain Village's walls, and attacks the Preta Path with a massive Rasengan, all before one of his sandals can fall from where he was originally standing and hit the ground. This is the most impressive thing he does, and I think it's Kishimoto's most aggressive attempt to visually communicate how fast Jiraiya is supposed to be in Sage Mode.
That is
his
impressive.
Other speed feats include blitzing the Human Path, reacting to a blindside approach from the Human Path, and landing a counterattack before it can even manage to attack him, interrupting the Animal Path's attempts to weave the hand seals needed to perform the summoning jutsu, and catching 3 of the Paths of Pain in a genjutsu, all at the same time before any of them could react. Now, I think Kakashi has Jiraiya definitively beat in terms of intelligence and jutsu variety. Not to say that Jiraiya isn't gifted in either of those areas, but he can't compete with Kakashi for a number of reasons. I'll start with intelligence because I think it's the easier of the two to explain. While Jiraiya is a very observant, shrewd, and smart fighter, he hasn't had enough opportunities to show off his mental acuity to convince me that he's smarter than Kakashi. Say what you want about Jiraiya, but Kakashi has thoroughly analyzed and broken down every single opponent he's been up against. Whenever he fights someone, he generally figures out how all of their unique abilities work, deduces a counter for them, and acts accordingly. He created plans to deal with Deidara, Kakuzu, Pain, Obito, Madara, Kaguya, like the list goes on. And while Jiraiya did figure out a way to deal with the 3 Paths of Pain he was fighting against, his strategy basically boiled down to, let me lure them into a small area and hit them with my instant kill move. Kakashi would have been able to think of the exact same thing just as quickly, if not more quickly, but the difference is he doesn't have that kind of ability at his disposal. This brings me to the subject of jutsu variety. While Jiraiya does have more on-panel jutsu showings and has more confirmed techniques under his belt, Kakashi can copy anything Jiraiya uses. The only thing the Sharingan can't copy are Kekkei Genkai techniques, and as far as everyone's aware, Jiraiya doesn't have one of those, meaning that anything he uses is fair game for Kakashi so long as it doesn't take up too much chakra. The other exceptions would be the summoning-based techniques, like sucking Kakashi inside the belly of a frog, for instance. Kakashi wouldn't be able to copy that, but stuff like Dark Swamp, Toad Flame Bombs, basic elemental jutsu, Kakashi would easily be able to replicate those. Now, I brought up speed earlier, and I mentioned that it's a bit hard to compare because Jiraiya doesn't have a whole lot of speed showings. So before I start discussing how the battle would go down, let's break down Kakashi's speed, talk about how it compares to Jiraiya's, and then we'll move on to the end of this. So up to the Pain arc and for the majority of the War arc, Kakashi doesn't do a whole lot that makes him seem like a speedster, but then during the fight against the 6th Jinchuriki under Obito's control, he starts reacting to attacks from multiple version 2 Jinchuriki at once, and also counterattacks. Like, he dodges a whole bunch of these, like, weird chakra hands being launched by the Jinchuriki, and then responds by using a lightning cable to cut them all in half. These version 2 Jinchuriki were, albeit when working together, able to tag KCM Naruto. And I'm not saying that that means Kakashi is as fast as KCM Naruto, but what I am saying is that it's a lot better than the speed feats Jiraiya has shown. Now, it's a bit hard to say how fast Sage Mode Jiraiya is because we don't know the full speed of the Paths of Pain that he was fighting, but regardless of how fast he is compared to Kakashi, I think the most important factor in the whole equation is Kakashi's possession of the Sharingan. Obito mentions during the fight against Guy, Kakashi, Bee, and Naruto that it is his Sharingan, not his Rinnegan, that allows him to react to his enemies' attacks so flawlessly. Presumably, the enemies he's talking about would include Naruto, the same Naruto that's faster than the Raikage. And Kakashi possesses the same eye, and while he isn't as physically fast as Obito is, it's not outlandish to assume that the Sharingan would allow him to read the movements of somebody like Sage Mode Jiraiya. It wouldn't be the first time something like this has happened either, since Sasuke's base 3 Tomoe Sharingan allowed him to react to the movements of the Raikage. So just for the sake of fairness, I won't make too many assumptions, and I'll say Jiraiya should be able to comfortably avoid Kakashi's attacks due to his superior speed thanks to being in Sage Mode, but Kakashi will also be able to react to Jiraiya's attacks pretty comfortably thanks to his possession of the Sharingan. So as for how I think the fight turns out, anything before the war arc loses. Part 1 gets stomped really bad, early Shippuden gets stomped kinda bad, and Pain Arc Kakashi does pretty well. This is actually a pretty close fight, I think, but Kakashi loses because he just doesn't have the chakra supply or the stamina to keep up with Jiraiya, and in Sage Mode he's nowhere near as strong, and presumably not quite as fast as Jiraiya. Plus Ma and Pa would be a real trouble to deal with. It would keep Kakashi from being able to stealth anywhere, even if Jiraiya doesn't put up the barrier that allows him to detect intruders. So, you know, Jiraiya gets a pretty handy win against any Kakashi pre-War Arc. Now, War Arc Kakashi is a very interesting opponent for Jiraiya. He has practically limitless chakra. He's able to spam elemental jutsu, shadow clones, Kamui, I mean, like everything at his disposal he uses like 12 times throughout the war. And it's only after a couple days and after fighting 5 to 6 Biju that he finally falls over and he's like, okay, I'm exhausted. I think the most important thing that Kakashi has in his arsenal in any fight, and especially in this fight, is Kamui, and his finesse with Kamui in the War Arc is ridiculous. He can teleport a Rasengan being carried by a moving Naruto, and also teleports one of Naruto's moving shadow clones. And by the way, at this point, Naruto is much faster than the Raikage, definitely a lot faster than Sage Jiraiya. Kakashi also claims that he would have been able to suck up all 6 of the Biju bombs being charged up by the 6-tailed beasts under Obito's control. There is nothing Jiraiya has in his entire arsenal that is anywhere near the size of 6 Biju bombs combined. Then Guy steps in and he's like, no, there's too many of them, you probably wouldn't be able to do it. But at the very least, let's say Kakashi would have been able to do 1. That means that Jiraiya's strongest attack, the massive Rasengan, would be susceptible to being removed from the battlefield by Kamui as well. This should also allow Kakashi to teleport summons, or at the very least partially teleport summons like he did with the Geto Mazo, although the only reason he was able to warp something as massive as part of the Geto Mazo was because he had some of KCM Naruto's chakra. And by the way, none of the feats that I mentioned before this were with the assistance of Naruto's chakra at all. When he said he was ready to teleport the Biju bombs, that was after he was exhausted from multiple days of fighting and spamming more jutsu than I care to name. So with a full reserve of chakra, he might be able to accomplish a lot more. So while he's definitely at risk of losing to Jiraiya here, I think that War Arc Kakashi takes this 7 out of 10 times, maybe even 8 out of 10. He just has so many tools to take Jiraiya out, like Kamui, the Raikiri, not to mention the lightning cable, which did borderline lethal damage to multiple V2 Jinchuriki, something that Orochimaru's Sword of Kusanagi couldn't even manage. And since Jiraiya could get impaled by the pain rods, there's no reason to assume he couldn't be damaged by Raikiri or something equally powerful. And while I do agree that Jiraiya is really powerful and would certainly be a tough opponent for Kakashi to face, he doesn't have anything that would help him deal with the plot armor given to Kakashi by Kishimoto in the War Arc. And so I think, like I said, gonna have to give this to Kakashi 7 to 8 out of 10 times. And then moving on to like Susanoo Kakashi, that one's obvious. It's a contest. That's gonna be all from me. If you want any more more. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll do my best to cover anything that I didn't mention in the video in the comments. Leave any future versus battle ideas you have in the comments as well. And until my next video, talk to you later. Swagkage out. Bye.
Peace. All right, there you guys have that. That's a good one. I didn't pause it. The video is kind of short, so I kind of wanted to let Swag say what he had to say. And now I'm going to say what I have to say here. So yeah, summing up what he said, I agree with just about everything he said, basically. So before War Arc, Kakashi loses more times than not in those previous versions. He's just Jiraiya's a superior shinobi. I mean, he's stronger, he's faster. You know, Kakashi does have the Sharingan. He could copy jutsus, maybe negate many of, you know, Jiraiya's jutsus with his own, thanks to the Sharingan's ability. In a taijutsu battle, you know, I think Jiraiya is just physically more. He's more dominant physically, despite the Sharingan being able to read his movements. I think he'll just be stronger. He'll overwhelm Kakashi in a taijutsu battle. Obviously, that's not all they would do. They'd use ninjutsu as well. If he gets Kakashi stuck in the toad, you know, like in the toad stomach or something like that, like you or summon, you know, the chief toad. It would be a real problem for Kakashi pre-War Arc. You know, he'd have a real problem. I just don't see how he'd defeat Jiraiya. He'd have to do something pretty finesse, you know, with quite some finesse to get the job done. Thinking of something that maybe Kakashi could do in a perfect world. Maybe he just does something that Jiraiya doesn't expect. I don't know. Pull something out that Jiraiya just doesn't anticipate. That's the only way I see Kakashi winning pre-War Arc. You know, I don't know. It's possible that Kakashi could win. It's very unlikely. I'm trying my best to think of something, but nothing's really coming to mind here. So yeah, I think he loses every version before War Arc. He loses 6 to 7, 8 out of 10 times. You know, when we get to War Arc, like Swag says, it seems like he has a substantial stamina boost, right? It's substantial. I mean, he's spamming Kamui, spamming Chidori, spamming, you know, everything. He's spamming all kinds of jutsus and does some pretty impressive feats, such as, like he said, teleporting a KCM2, moving Naruto's Rasengan, which is much faster than Jiraiya in Sage mode, much faster. So anything that Jiraiya would throw at him, he'd definitely Kamui immediately. Maybe even Kamui Jiraiya. I don't know. And that'd be GG, basically, by, you know, just removing him from the battlefield, keeping him there, and, you know, in the Kamui dimension. I believe he's faster. I believe he's, you know, he's amped. You know, he gets this certain amplification to all his abilities. And everything from speed to taijutsu to ninjutsu to stamina, it just amplifies significantly to the point where Jiraiya's abilities, most of them will be negated or eliminated with the Kamui, just removed from the battlefield. Jiraiya he'd have to be in Sage mode, maybe have Chief Toad, have the Toads. I think that's the best case scenario where he beats War Arc Kakashi. He does have his, you know, audio genjutsu. I don't think he'd even hit Kakashi. I think he'd be too quick. In a taijutsu battle, he probably still is stronger than Kakashi, but I think Kakashi, I don't know, I think he's quite a bit faster than he was before in his previous versions. He might not be stronger than Jiraiya, right? Taijutsu straight up punch for punch, you know, but I think he'd be quick enough to evade most of Jiraiya's taijutsu. In a ninjutsu battle, like I said, he'll negate everything or just Kamui it. Yeah, I think he'd overwhelm Jiraiya. To be quite honest, he might even Kamui the damn Toad, the Chief Toad, or the two Toads, which would I believe, affect Jiraiya's Sage mode. Maybe even get him out of Sage mode. And at that point, base Jiraiya just really doesn't stand a chance. Yeah, I think Kakashi is smarter. I do agree with that. With what I said, he's smarter, just intellect. He's smarter. He's had much experience, just like Jiraiya. I mean, like I said, they're very experienced shinobi. And yeah, I think in the strongest versions, I mean, technically the strongest version is double Sharingan Kakashi who would just absolutely stop Jiraiya with the perfect Susanoo. He would absolutely stop him, just cut him in two with cut him in two basically. But yeah, this was a good one. Very interesting battle up to until you get to war on Kakashi. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. There's so many variables in these kind of battles. I try to do my best to break it down as best I can. Trying to take in all the variables and all the factors, all the possible scenarios. But it is impossible, because there's infinite scenarios, there's infinite things that could happen. One of them could be bloodlusted, one of them could be kind of just chilling, not really amped. There's so many things that you got to take into consideration. But I try my best, just like Swag does, to break these down. Like I said, let me know in the comments. And before I end it, I said this in my last video. I'm gonna keep saying this for the next couple videos because I really want to interact with y'all. At the end of every outro, I have my social media there. I just want to say, come hit me up there, or in the description. At the very bottom of the description, I have my links. I just want to really get to interact with you guys. I see that you guys mess with my stuff. I mess with y'all. I love y'all. And, maybe you can give me, if you want to just talk in general, I'm down. I love you all. Or for recommendations, for anything, for anything, I'm there. I really want to get in touch with y'all. I love you all. And it's a real pleasure doing these, I love you all. But yeah, guys, that's going to wrap it up. If you got any recommendations, like I said, let me know in the comments or anywhere else. But this is Jiraiya signing out with another video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.